All the glare gone?
Cool. Camera roll. Sound rolling.
Sound rolling.
All right. Let me know you're ready.
Ready.
My name is Roy DeBerry. It's November the 29th, 2021. Uh, we this is a project focused on North Mississippi Rural Legal Services, specifically dealing with oral history and trying to capture the stories of people that's been lawyers, people that have been community folk, people that's been paralegal, and over the 50 years of great service that this organization has been for Northern Mississippi. I'm joined today by Morgan Cotarini, who is a filmmaker, and with her is Mikhail Gandhi and Hannah Branch. We are coming from the offices here in Oxford, Mississippi, and today we are just delighted, absolutely a pleasure to be in a room with an institution. And I say that not lightly. I say that based on my own knowledge of Mr. Alvin Chambliss. What we want to do today is really focus initially on Mr. Chambliss' background, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the North Mississippi Rural Services Connection, and then Ayers and all the great cases that he's been involved with over time. We may not be able to cover all the great journey today, but if necessary, we may have a retake. So we're going to start with some personal things, Mr. Chambliss.
Okay.
So let me just ask
Happy
you
to be here
for
today.
the audience out there, because there are people that clearly know you all over the world, but there are some people who may not know you, may not know about your personal background. So let me ask you first, and this can be a series of questions: where were you born, where you grew up, who your parents' name, grandparents' name, and who had the greatest influence on you when you were growing up. We'll start with where you were born, where you grew up.
Okay, yes. Thank you for having me. My name is Alvin O. Chambliss Jr., and things evolve. Now they call me the last original civil rights lawyer in America, and I had that title since 1993, right after Ayers. But anyway, I was born in Columbia. Well, really, I was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, Warren County. And Ledocia Chambliss and Alvin Chambliss were my mother and father. Thereafter, I went to public schools in both Marion County, that's Columbia, BIA, Mississippi, and I also attended school in Warren County, Vicksburg, Mississippi. But most of my schooling was at Jefferson High School in Columbia, where I played football, basketball, and tried to do track pole vault. They didn't have it as a, in high school and really in grammar school, really. I was sort of an activist. Back then they paddled you. They didn't, but I got paddled every day for something. I always asked questions, and the teachers would say, well, and they would make examples. They said, well, Chambliss, he talked too much, but he get his lesson, he makes straight A's. So, she'd always use me as a reference that while I talked a lot, I also studied and was a pretty good student, so they tolerated me. But believe it or not, and my sister don't want to admit this, but I know what happened to me. I flunked the first grade. In the first grade, I used to be fighting and everything, and I ended up out of the first grade and didn't know my ABCs. And I went to Vicksburg, Mississippi, Miss Van Ross, and she took a liking to me, and she taught me my ABCs, and taught me the alphabets and the multiplication tables and all. So that was in Vicksburg. when we were back, and I was staying in Vicksburg with my father. My father and my mother divorced, and of course, I was separated and divorced later. But then I went to with my grandmother, and I graduated. I went. Most of my schooling was in Columbia, Mississippi, at John J. Jefferson High School, and because that's where my grandmother. The greatest influence, of course, was my grandmother. Her name was Elizabeth Chambliss. We call her Mama Dot, but basically she just you would always tell me, son, get your education because you're gonna need it. They can't take it away from you. I recall when I graduated from Jackson State, I told her I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be like Thurgood Marshall. My dad said, well, maybe you need to work. My mama said, well, you need to get a little more. And one of my relatives said, you too much education will make you crazy. But my grandmother said, look, son, go on to law school. I'll help you. Well, how's she going to help me when she didn't help me? But again, that's the drive that she had. One part of this thing was I played football, and I was weighing 140 pounds going into my 10th grade. And I realized that I was not going to, I wanted to go to college, but there's no way I could finance it, and my people didn't have to. So I decided I was going to play football and get a scholarship. So then I left Columbia every summer. I would go to New Orleans, and I'd work at the drugstore. I had this Waterbury drugstore, and I went from 140 to 180, and and then 200, and at 200 I was able, and of course I wanted a scholarship to Jackson State back then. Willie Richardson, the All-American, and they didn't give me a scholarship. I had some offers, some JUCOs, I didn't know. And so I walked on Jackson State, and of course I made the team and then messed up. And I ain't gonna say what I did, but then I went to a little school they call Prentice Junior College for 1 year. And after that 1 year, I went back to Jackson State, walked on, made the team, and matter of fact, I was the 35th player. That was, but that JUCO, that 1 year thing. And of course, I started all over. So, it's kind of crazy. But no, I went to Prentice Junior College. I learned a lot. But then when I went to Jackson State, I enrolled as a freshman. And so I finished school in 3 years.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's it. C.J. Duckworth also was my principal. And of course my family, my father and my mother, but I mean my grandmother more than anybody else, and C.J. Duckworth. And one last thing is that next door to us was the so-called Freedom House, and that's you had people coming from the University of Wisconsin, and I started going over there in the 9th and 10th grade. And Mama told me, don't be seen. You can sneak over there, but don't let the white folks see you going over there because something may happen. And she used to feed them, but now she would go a whole block and then come down through a cornfield. But she didn't want about, right. And so I would listen to them, and they was talking about how voter registration is important and welfare and all that other stuff. So when I went to college, Jackson State, I was pretty much into the civil rights movement. They'd shot the Freedom House up 58 times, and there was some people in there, and of course, nobody was killed. And of course, I got pictures of that I could get to you later, but no, so that's my early childhood.
John Peoples was president of Jackson State at that point.
Oh, no.
Okay.
When I was, I'm sorry. When I attended Jackson State, President Reddix was the president, and we protested every, oh, Lord. Jackson State University and Howard University seemed like I'm the ugly duckling because everywhere I went, there was protests. And every year I was at Jackson State, you know, somebody would get hit by the car and we protest and throw balls and all, and they finally closed it out. After. But we raised so much Hades, so much trouble, and so, you know, I don't know if we helped President Reddick leave, but John People became president when we were there. And we were glad to see him because he would talk to us. And you know, same thing with Howard. You had Neighbor, and we protested, and Neighbor left. And, of course, we had Cheek. And, of course, Cheek and I was a good friend. But anyway,
now,
go
so
back
that
there.
was Jackson State. You did your undergraduate degree at Jackson State. And then, so where did you go to law school?
Okay, I went to Howard University. At Jackson State, I was president. Went to Jackson State, played football. 3 years, and of course they wanted me to play the last year. I say no, I'm going to law school. And so at Jackson State, I met most of the freedom people. I met Aaron Henry. I met what's his?
Bob Moses.
I saw Moses, but the person who the MFDP, Freedom Democratic Party. Gilliard, yeah. Okay. I did a project on Gilliard. And, you know, and Gilliard talked to me. He said, Al, you know, at his funeral, I spoke, but he said, Al, we need you as a lawyer. Don't because then you had Rod Page was the coach. And he, you know, would, you know, joke that, you know, he didn't want us to cut off his turd. He wasn't winning all these games, so he didn't want us to be protest. And if he could found anybody at the Freedom House or anything like that, they automatic cut. Well, see, I made an excuse in political history and political science to have Gilliard, and I go interview, and I just told him I wanted to, you know, just quit Jackson State and join it. No, they don't come back here. We need you as a lawyer. And so Gilliard, and of course I met Fannie Lou Hamer and some of the other people. So I was very influenced by Larry Gilliard Lawrence. And from there, and of course I played football. And like I said, I was president of the yard. I was... They wouldn't let me, Page would let me run for president of the student government.
And for the audience out there, Rod Page later became secretary.
Rod Page is still my friend. Rod Page left Jackson State, and then he became, got his PhD, and became the school board and superintendent of education and secretary of education. And so a lot of people say Rod Page and I are competing in terms of, and by the way, they did make him interim president of Jackson State for a while. And they say Rod and I are competing in terms of notoriety, you know, but I'm not competing. I just want to help.
Let me ask you about the Howard experience. So
sure.
You ended up at Howard. You mentioned never been president there. How long you were there in law school? How many years at Howard?
3 years, and oh goodness, this is timely. Thank you for asking. The first year I was at Howard, they had a gentleman from Richmond, and he was protesting. Neighbor promised the student amnesty. 1966. I get that in 1967. Well, once the student went home in 1966, Neighbor suspended expelled a substantial amount of the students, okay? Well, and so they started to protest in 66. But it's the first time because Howard was a docile school. I get to the yard in 1967, Yeah, you at Brown, and it's going on right now, and toward a black university. And it was talking about how Howard was a plantation, it was black, and it had all this wealth, and it was doing nothing for the movement. And I mean, and then by the end, Stokely came up in there, and then Stokely Carmichael and a guy, couple of civil rights people, but was teaching on the yard. And of course, they had the case, I can't recall the case, but it was versus Howard University. I named the guy, but basically it said Howard University, even though it was a private university, it was impregnated with a public trust, and that the students had to have a hearing before they were suspended. Then all those students came back, and I met them all. I met them all, and basically let me just say, every year I was at Howard, we had a protest. The first year you had the disruption of the Charter Day activity, and of course they sent me as a representative from the law school because they basically said that I had civil rights out from Mississippi, etc. And of course, I had A in, I had an A in torts, a 98 average. And I messed around, I was on the committee, and Dorsey Lane was the general counsel. And Dorsey Lane, he said they didn't give him no notice. I wasn't responsible for that. And he said, well, you on the committee. And so that man gave me an F. And, a lot of other folk. But we ended up protesting, closing the university down, and we went from numbers to great pass or fail. I'm just saying, it was a lot of dissension. They had another guy teaching legal accounting, and he flunked 50% of the people. He said, Howard, you have to take accounting, and you have to take how to be a lawyer, because most of us, they thought was going to be private practitioners. But so we closed the university down. Matter of fact, the chain for my car, I still got it. I'm the one closed the law school. But, we just had to do that. Daisy Collins, Lake Jones down in Louisiana, Daisy Collins, Ohio, Billy Hunter, over the NBA Players Association, we all was together. The next year, after disruption of the Charter Day activity, then they had Hewitt Brown, and somehow I forgot, but I wasn't a part of it, but one or two buildings were burned, and there again, and then my senior year, you got the Jackson State killings. And they chose me to come down, and I came. Yeah, well, I came down, and what the boy name? Black Power.
Willie
Ricks, yeah, Willie Ricks took my rental car and took it for $3. I'm taking this rental car in the name of the revolution, black man. And I was crazy. I let him have my rental car, but I was, for 3 days. But he didn't wreck it. He brought it back. And I was a part of that. I wrote the petition for the injunction. You see, the people were coming from the Alumni Association, and they wanted to see all them bullet holes and all, and they wanted to not allow people to inspect it. So the alumni, mayor, almost mayor, and so we filed an injunction, and of course we lost, and then we went to the Court of Appeal, and the Attorney General at that time, I forgot his name, but you can find him out. But
Patterson.
the Attorney General from
US.
Washington,
He
flew down, and they had the what they call it, runway, whatever they call the thing where the planes are. And he said he was not gonna get out unless we guaranteed him there wasn't gonna be no violence. And so, lawyers committee, Frank Parker, and so and the Fifth Circuit heard our case in the lawyers committee telephonically. And of course they denied it, and then of course we took the position, if they didn't rule, then we were gonna we gonna protest, gonna be some more bloodshed. But the Fifth Circuit telephonically denied it, and of course the next day, it was a Friday, and I think the next day, Friday night, and of course the next day there was no protest. But that was a rich history.
And you did that as a student, so this was your senior year at Howard.
Yeah, but not only that, man. Let me tell you, I got arrested after that. Terry Lenza was over Legal Services Corporation. The man just died, Lord, what his name, but he just died, but he was the Secretary of Defense under Bush. What's the name of the man on the Bush? He was Secretary of Defense under Bush. But he at that time was Secretary of Health Education, because it was health education, whereas he was just over education. And Terry Lynn was on legal services, and he came down and said, well, how you going to let these students, and, he didn't say Negroes, but he had some choice words for us, and he told us to leave. We said, we ain't going no damn well. And he said, I'm going to give y'all 15 minutes. And so he, I ran downstairs and got my car and parked it, because that fee is $100, you see. And that garage, the maximum would be about $20. And we had to fight our way back. And of course, we had problem with Billy, because Billy Hunter said his wife was having a baby, NBA. I'm saying because he's famous. Yeah. And I went down there, well, Billy, you knew that. Why you? Well, yeah, he jumped on the table. Y'all wearing these dashikis, but these processed minds and all that. And Billy leave, and he left. And of course, we all got arrested. Now, I didn't know whether or not I was going to be able to take the Mississippi bar, because I'm the trespass, a criminal trespass, and I got arrested. And but the arrest, I didn't tell y'all the reason why. The University of Pennsylvania, they had a program they called the Reginald Heber Smith Fellowship. And that was a program where they were encouraging, it's like the Peace Corps, they was encouraging lawyers to work in legal services, okay? 98% of all the lawyers in that program was white. Oh, no, we found out we took over legal services, and when we got through, we got arrested. But the program went from the University of Pennsylvania to Howard University. And I think they had about 500 people, and 450 were black. So, look, that's how we were able to energize legal services, okay? Legal services was passive before Reggie, but Reggie, you get a 2-year scholarship, and they assign you to a legal services program. And so I think it lasted 6-7 years, but 500 people, and like I said, the first year we had 450, and of course we leveled off a little bit.
Gotcha. Let me ask you about the bar. You mentioned the fact that because of that possible arrest, that you may not be able to take the Mississippi bar. So, but you did take the Mississippi bar.
Oh, right? Yeah, they didn't. I mean, they expunged my record, but at the same time, I still wasn't. They expunged, but the bottom line, I still was afraid. Now I was afraid, it's kind of funny. You asked me at the bar. I wore dashikis, and I did all kinds of crazy stuff. But the last 2 weeks of the bar review, I wore suits and ties. And of course, I passed the first time. I mean, it's one thing to be black. It's another thing to be black and smart. Same thing after that. even before I took the bar, on the way here, they had SLAM, Southern Legal Action Movement. They were, they have the, I don't forgot the name of it, I'll name it, but the San Francisco-based legal organization, and the National Lawyers Guild.
Okay.
National Lawyers Guild is basically 95% white, okay? And SLAM was the Southern Legal Action. All the white kids from the South was going to go back and change the world. Well, I went to the convention in Tuscaloosa, the University of Alabama. I had my dashiki on, talking all that old crazy talk, man. And Friday night, Fazan and I was in the room and everything, and we wasn't gonna go to the dance because white folks feel blacks. We basically white, but we've been talking and with dashikis, and old sheriff came, but we didn't know. Do you know that we heard somebody say, "That's that room, that is," and they tried to break in the room, and what the boy name is? He's from Alton Maddox from New York. He went to the University of Georgia. He has a television program. He's famous. Alton Maddox and Al Sharpton fought. Alton was the radical, and Sharpton was the middle. But he has a radio and TV program now. But Alton Maddox, we talk. He say, "You all going to Howard? Y'all not used to the South. The South hadn't changed after you. I didn't know, man. And shoot, so we tried to call out. Boom! They knocking on the door, trying to knock it in, and so we couldn't call out. They jammed the phone at the Holiday Inn. Anybody know anything about Tuscaloosa? You got a Holiday Inn, a river right down, maybe 50 or 60 yards. And we were thinking they're going to lynch us, and they probably would have. But we called Alton Mother, but we could call room to room. You couldn't call out the front desk and jam the phone. And so we called Alton Maddox, and he came down with his gun and shot it 4 times in the air, and they dispersed. Within an hour, we was gone. We brought our butt back to Washington, D.C.
I got you. So now, I'm trying to get when you finished law school and you came back to Mississippi.
Yeah.
Did you practice?
Let me play with that. Now, a Reggie is a scholarship. You had to work with some organization, social, benevolent, I guess, but you had to sign up with Legal Service. I signed up with North Mississippi Rural Legal Service, but
what year did you
that was in 1970. But my first 4 months, I worked with Delta Ministry and Mississippi. What is Mississippi? What is that program? But it was over in Greenville, the Delta Foundation,
right.
And then they had a Head Start program, and I was with them, and I met Harry Boy, and that was the time when me and what's the name? Fannie Hamer. See, we had a meeting, man. Aaron Henry, and they most people don't know it, but Fannie Lou Hamer could not read and write. Okay, and so they just go in meeting, and she tried to do it, and she didn't know no Robert rules of procedure, and I started representing her. Every time I tell her, I represent her. Again, hey, man, Harry Boy, you know Harry Boy from McCone and Aaron Henry, and then at the state NAACP, you'd have that old boy from Biloxi, which you know I'm talking about, who was a genius in terms of procedure. But the Head Start program, CDGM. Yeah, see, I was working with CDGM before I went to Howard, and then
Child Development Program.
Child Development Group of Mississippi, CDGM, and then of course you had a program, and as a matter of fact, Harry Boy recruited me, and and of course. But I wasn't getting no legal experience. I was doing social work, so to speak. So I said, no, I need to come on back. So I was assigned to the Greenwood office, and that's what I did. I just put
So that
them
was your
down.
first connection with North Mississippi was with Greenwood office. So who were some of the people in that Greenwood office, and what was the connection between the Greenwood office and the Oxford office?
Well, David Littman.
Okay, I know David.
David Littman and I were the two, and Alex Sanders was in and out. I mean, and I'm just Lord, Alex he did, but you never knew, cause we thought we wanted Alex to be a legislator. He'd say no. He'd say the money is in local, is supervised. So he became a supervisor. But people fair realize. Alex and I was in class together. We both graduated from Jackson State. I think he was a semester or two ahead of me, but Alex Sanders was, we fought like everything out. His political science, we all say we're gonna go to law school. But in terms of Fannie Lou Hamer, I met Jake Ayers during that period. And I knew all the people with the Delta Minister. Now, I don't forget the guy's name, but he's like, he died.
Yeah, he died.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so we used to argue. And, I'm like, very loquacious. And all my life, I've just taken a position. I take it right now. And I'm 77 years old. Ain't nobody in the world better than me at what I do. Now, and what I mean by that is this. You may do it this way, I do it this way, but I can think. And my position was, with David Littman and all. I mean, Bob Pressman and Armand Durfin and Ayers, both of them Harvard. I went to Jackson State, Howard. But you can't beat me thinking. Now, you may be as good as I am. You ain't better than me, because I'm going to think about it. I'm going to figure out a way, and I'm going to pray and everything. I say that to say I never backed down a day in my life when all these big guys, and that's the way now. That's why, I'm loved by a lot of poor people, but I'm going to be honest with you. You got people in the black community, especially the middle class, they hate my guts. So, a lumpen proletariat, and whites. And that's the other thing about legal services, too. Let me just say that. Even though the newspaper and press would basically castigate men, say a lot of things, the fact of the matter is, and they'll tell you in this record right here, I was the person who represented more whites than anybody. I told legal services I want all the white clients, not divorce now, but I'm talking about litigation. And one of the famous cases, Garnet White from Pontotoc, Mississippi, and he had a moratorium relief, right, on a farmer's home administration. And he had, I don't know what was heart condition or whatever, but Judge Katie was having that. And see, the agriculture department had not implemented. You have rules, but you have to implement them. And so Judge Katie forced them to implement the rule. And of course, he had 2 years to pay on his house. They gave him a moratorium relief. And of course, he fainted in the back of Judge Katie's courtroom And of course, Judge Katie recessed the stuff and suggested he go to hospital. He said, "No, I want to hear this." Also, Judge Katie gave a bench ruling in that case, and it's the first case of first impression in this country in terms of moratorium. Section 505 moratorium really farmers' home.
Right.
But he was white and he died by Chambliss. But I would go out of my way because basically there was the impression of legal service that we just represented blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, I mean, that's even now, I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, but at the end of the day, you ain't gonna find no white person in America gonna tell me that I call them some, I said white boy and all. I mean, that's my language. But at the end of the day, I'm a Christian, and in other words, we have to, I ain't gonna say we, but for me, it was important because legal service was looked upon as an organization just for blacks, and that's just not true.
I got you.
Okay.
Before we get to the big boys, the Ayers case and others, let me ask you about the community connection. You know, you mentioned Henry Boyd earlier. You mentioned Skip
June Johnson,
June Johnson. What was that
John
relationship?
Buffington,
Yeah, John. What was that relationship between
Jesse Pennington,
Jesse? What was that relationship between all the lawyers, but also paralegals in the community? How did
Miss
that fit?
Burt,
Okay.
Mary Sue Gordon, Henry Boyd,
What role did they play?
Stanfield, what Tupelo, the girl who's over the Mississippi veterans of the Civil Rights, Margaret Kibbe. Yeah, she's white.
got her on tape.
Yeah, that's right. And so the point I'm making is that, and Wayne Johnson. And by the way, did you know Wayne Johnson interviewed me? I had to do an interview with him. He had a heart murmur. And for the director, I was director of legal service at some point. And he, matter of fact, I came up here as the director. In other words, he interviewed me in the hospital. And he asked me questions and all. And, you know, this little man, you know, Wayne's small. And, you know, the board unanimously gave me the job. But at the time, like I said, I didn't know L.A. Billups was signed to Lou. Lou Miles had that. I mean, half of the clerical people knew. And, you know, man, Lou became very good friends. But,
Okay.
Let's
Pause for a second.
pause for a second.
Okay.
Yes.
They're gonna reset out.
Ready?
Ooh.
There we go.
Okay, so Al, we were talking about that community connection. You mentioned a whole bunch of folk. I just wanted to ask you before I move to the Ayers case, how important were community people to the effectiveness of the legal services program? Without community people, without the paralegal, could we have had an effective program just with the lawyers?
no, the way legal services was set up, you had the community workers, basically social workers, and they basically were the people who were doing the administrative law type of thing. They were allowed to do hearings for welfare rights hearings. They were allowed to do Social Security, food stamps, and those are the cases that people need. And they, you know, they assisted us, the lawyers, in terms of our duty. But let me say that the people do not understand, it seems to me, how important it is to be a lawyer, an activist, a counselor, an organizer, and just a straight person who go to church and live in the community and, you know, socialize. I mean, that's the difference for an example, lawyers today, generally, I guess I'm not going to say I'm against it, but they get their little settlement, one or two cases of win. They get $1 million judgment, and they go and live in the suburbs. Sometimes they continue with the church in the neighborhood. Most of the time they change churches. And so you have no real interplay between the lawyer and the community. And so, Wayne Johnson used to push that, and Mildred Quarles and Rachel McGee. And, they just was always, telling us what we had to do. And it stuck on me because, like I said, I wanted to be just like Thurgood Marshall. And let me just say, before you get into the Ayers, because, see, we file a lawsuit. If you want to really get to it, like I said, I was at Jackson State when I started, looking at what was happening. And of course, Ike Madison was at one of the, I think, theological schools there in Atlanta. Seminary, yeah. And we hooked up at Howard. And we would together from 1967 to 1970, and that's when we started Ayers. But like I said, before I left Jackson State, they filed a lawsuit, right? And the D.C. United States District Court in Washington, D.C., saying in essence, how is it that schools, grammar schools and high schools got to desegregate, and the colleges? What we gonna do about the colleges? And of course, we filed it, and of course,
which would leads me to your point
Adams versus Richardson.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Before you do that one, let me just ask you again. You mentioned Ike. You also mentioned, of course, June Johnson earlier.
Yes.
And you also mentioned Jake Ayers. And of course, the case we know became Jake
Stanfield.
Ayers. Right. So explain to me the basis, because a lot of times people, when it's such a famous case, right? It's
yeah, but
like Brown versus case. But a lot of times
it's even more so. Thank you for that. Thank you for asking me that. I'll answer that, but let me just say, we filed an Ayers case. I think January the 17th. I think 1975. All right, that was the original filing. Ike at the time was working at the Lawyers Committee, but it was before, and we kept telling Ike, me and Lou Myers, man, if you allow first of all, if you file a lawsuit there, you work for Lawyers Committee, it becomes a Lawyers Committee case. And you're going to end up with these black schools being closed now because all they want is integration. I mean, and ain't nothing wrong with it, but,
let me ask you about that. Did they want integration or they wanted desegregation?
No, okay.
Okay,
See, that's what I'm trying to say. See, most people don't understand the original intent of even if you go back to 1619 Project, slavery, the original intent was for black folk not to have any status as human beings. And even though things change a little bit, even now, whenever, Trump is because Obama was. Ain't no in the world Trump would have been president had not Obama. If Obama, the scum of the earth, black folk, then anybody, and we got anybody. You know the intellectual proudness of our former president. The point I'm making, going back again, the original intent of American democracy for blacks to be slaves. Dred Scott, there are remnants of Dred Scott now. And I don't care what you talk about in terms of critical race theory. And it's a theory. That's all it is. How in the hell you going to talk about course and critical? It's a thing. I was there in '84, but that's a little bit. When I was stuck, and I was one of the persons who railed against it. Not against it, but it's like I like to say, Andy Young used to always talk about smart-ass white boys. I say these elite northern Negroes, these elite northern Negroes, I met them at Howard. They want to come down here and rule people and get their money and go back. They could care less about how we work and everything. And critical race theory, affirmative action, good example. I'm fast forward. When I left here, I went to Thurgood, but I'm just saying I was at a convention after I left legal services, and I was at law school, and we got Bollinger, who became president of Michigan State, University of Michigan. And of course they filed her. Me and him had arguments, man, because he was basically saying, he said, Chambliss, we ain't talking about no desegregation, we talking about affirmative action. And he said, it's more of us than you. And he's right. Even though you got 20 states, 19 states in the District of Columbia at the time of Brown in 1954 had segregated systems. How many cases? You had 4, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, and Alabama. And now Maryland 5, which means you got 14 states out of compliance with Brown and Fordice and the District of Columbia. Every last North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, those states are still segregated. Higher education system. And that's why, but see, you gotta see the charitable giving, all right? They know that we, and that's a shame, but it's true, we can't finance, and we can, but we don't have a commitment. There's not one black public interest law firm in America, and never has been. Now, when Julius Chambliss with that NAACP Legal Defense Fund, we thought that Julius was going to leave there and then start public interest. The only reason I came there, I wouldn't have never been in no legal services. I wanted to do law, but I wanted to be able to live too. And the only option I had was legal services. I stayed here for almost 20 years, and you know what I'm saying. I mean, there were things I wanted to do, but I could not let this Ayers case go. And even now, like I said, the 50th anniversary is coming in 4 years, 2025. And my point is, again, going back to where you was talking about, I'm only saying I'm fast track back tonight. We filed a case January the 17th, 1995. Okay, that's from 75 to 85. That's 10 years. From 85 to 88. That's 13 years. We didn't go to court till 14 years later. So it's a lot in between. But my point is, you got to have other cases. That's why I was saying, if you talk about, and we mentioned it Ayers, but there was the case here. Victim Active, for an example. He had a case that went up to the Supreme Court. Then you had, I had 3. Legal services loaned me to entity up there in Memphis, Tennessee, NCBL. They used to let us do NCBL cases, and City of Memphis versus Green. And that's City of Memphis versus Green. 1980. In 1981. That's the first time with the Supreme Court. And Wilhelm signed the thing that I could do it, and I did it. Spare time. And then, of course, City of Memphis versus Green. And then 2-3 years later, right, you had the Mike Espy case. Most people don't understand that we filed a lawsuit to get the 2nd Congressional District. I filed it. Alvin O. The name of the case is what is it? In the Supreme Court, it's Brooks versus the Mississippi Republican Party, and that's what 451 U.S. 100. 1984, I think. Now, in that case, and this is a good story, let me tell it right quick. So we said we needed a black district, and so the lines were going parallel.
Him and Kirksey worked it out on that case.
Kirksey, I'm gonna get to Kirksey. Okay. That's what it meant. So the line was going parallel. And then you had this case, a book, the congressman from Mississippi, and he was talking about he had a Delta district, and they took it away from him. It was a white guy. And so I read the book. Norman Gillespie, who was the clerk of the United States District Court, white boy, he gave me the book. I read. I said, oh, so well, we got to get them lines going back and get this Delta district. So I teamed up with Alice Harden and some other folk, and we had hearings all over the state. Every time they have hearing, we proposed the Delta district, okay? So they came up with a Delta district, right? Now, when they come up with the Delta district, they ran a guy by name, I think it's Robert Clark. Yeah, Robert Clark, that's him. And he ran. He didn't have enough voting age population, okay? Now, we got to file a lawsuit. We all agreed to that. Frank Parker and the Lawyers Committee, and of course, me, Alvin Chambliss, and Legal Services. Okay, fine. We go down, Victim Act here, yeah, 29 black lawyers in Kirksey office, but Kirksey office was Lawyers Committee, because Kirksey had a little office over there, but he operated with Frank. Frank Park was his go-to man, okay, fine. And so, we down in Johnny Walls, they made him chairman, and that's the other thing. See, when Johnny was chairman, we made Johnny over the Democratic Party. And of course, they wanted Johnny to do a lot of things. If you know Johnny, he's okay, but Johnny wasn't too aggressive, past it. And so, we 29 black lawyers in Kirksey in Lloyd's Committee office. And Kirksey said, well, I know y'all are here to do this, but I'm turning this over to Johnny Walls, and he'll do what? And Johnny gets up and he says, well,
we need to keep you on.
No, but he gets up and he said, well, I'm going to appoint Frank Parker as my assistant, and you guys, we can't have 29, but y'all send y'all resume, and I said, the hell with you. And I walked out, goddamn, and everybody followed me. That was on a Saturday. We worked all day Saturday night. I called my wife, say, baby, you ain't gonna see me till Monday. And we worked Sunday, and Monday morning at 9 o'clock, we'd had that lawsuit. The name of it was David Jordan versus State of Mississippi. And like I said, so that's but by then, Legal Service didn't have no money and all that other crazy stuff. And so I didn't get to argue. It was a 3-judge panel. We won in the 3-judge panel, and then, you go up. the Supreme State Republican Party took it up there, and of course Frank Parker argued. That was my case. I get credit for that. In my case, okay. And so and then the third case was Ayers versus Fordice, or U.S. and Ayers versus Fordice, 505 U.S. 717. So I've been up to the Supreme Court 3 times, but now in the Fifth Circuit, I've been there over 55 times and been to the Supreme Court 25 times. But the McKin, though, let me make it clear. Going to the Supreme Court, now let me just say, it's a difference between going to the Supreme Court and arguing in the Supreme Court. Because every time you file an informal purpose case with the Supreme Court, that's going to the Supreme Court. They ain't grant cert. So I filed, it's just like legal services. Anybody know anything about legal services? 85% of the cases depending on what kind of cases, you're going to lose because the client is a loser when they come to you. I mean, how you going to be, they evict you, and you ain't paid your rent in 2 years. I mean, what kind of stuff means that you have 2 years free? And you gonna go to court? Most of the people are losers, and I don't mean that no disrespect. Because you're poor, that don't mean you're loser. But I'm saying legal services cases are hard because they come to you as the last resort. You're not the first resort. Now, getting back to that, so I was saying to you, you had Skip Robinson versus Eli, and that was the case where the grand jury, Skip and them was, the United League was marching and all, and Skip said there was a bunch of clans and all of that, and then the grand jury tried to subpoena Skip to identify what Klan member was on the grand jury. And the Fifth Circuit won that. Now, Robinson versus Eli. Now, what the boy name? Alan Dershowitz and Larry Trout, all of them got all pleading. Every time they wanted someone, Sarah Harvard came here. So I get emotional, forgive me, audience, but I get emotional because we were the civil rights entity, and nobody has written about us, okay? And that's why I'm very happy. That's why I ain't rushing this interview.
That's why I want you to be here to tell this story.
And that's why I ain't rushing this interview, because I'm saying we did Marley Barr versus the city of Oxford, where we got $10 million for this school. When I filed Marley Barr, no black, maybe one, street in Oxford, one black street was paid. Everything up with dirt. All the white folks, and I tied those funds up and everything, and that they paved every black street. They gave us a Olympic-sized swimming pool, and they gave us the park. We didn't have no park. We said we want our own park up on Price Hill. Believe it or not, we got no basement. We got no park.
I know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, that street is named after a cousin of mine, Price.
Okay. But the point is now, but not just that case. Robinson versus University of Mississippi, but it was the president before the Robinson versus University of Mississippi. We filed a lawsuit to get blacks at Ole Miss. They gave scholarships at the University of Mississippi to all entities but law students. We said, wait a minute, you got all these scholarships in federal. And again, I'm not saying they didn't get the federal, but I'm saying they had these scholarships. But there seemed to have been some policy which did not allow them to give scholarships to minority students. We won that case, and Ole Miss Law School was put on probation, all right? And we did discover and found out all the little secrets and everything. And of course, we settled that case. And as a result of that case, they hired 2 black faculties. And, Robson versus, university. But I don't forgot the president's name, but it was the president going back. I don't
Maybe
forget.
Turner.
No, before Turner.
Oh, before Turner?
Go back.
Okay.
The one, Fortune.
Okay.
Fortune. That's his name, Fortune. Y'all know Fortune. Then, we filed a couple of equalization suits, and the most famous equalization suit, which was not ours now, but that was the case over there in, not Drew, but what the Mannings, Archie Mannings, what Archie Mannings, we just say Archie Mannings all the time, the Mannings.
I think that may be Drew. It's from the Delta.
Yeah, but I ain't Drew.
Okay.
But the point I'm making is that Shaw, the last was Shaw. I forgot the name versus Shaw. And the bottom line was we did a couple of equalization cases. And of course, the case we talked about on Price Hill and the swimming pool and all that, that was equalization.
Okay.
We did all kinds of bank cases, and we set a precedent in terms of quarrels, Mildred Quarles. My Mildred Quarles case was just as famous because we went to the Fifth Circuit 10 times as the Ayers case. And, we were able to get, when we left here, we had 49 black teachers in the Oxford school system. 49. Right. And of course, one of the cases that we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to give to our distinguished filmmaker, is a case where it is a part of quarrels where I basically said that they moved to get out from under the desegregation thing here. And I made a speech. I was president of the NAACP, and I made a speech. I said the 2 black, members of the Board of Education need to resign because they are clear and present danger to black folk. Because they know the school system is still racist and blah, blah. Will Hickman, who's the lawyer here, basically said, file a complaint with Judge Katie saying I was intimidating the black board members, okay? And the black board, Dorothy Henderson, and the other guy, I'll name him after a while. And, and so Judge Katie gave me 20 days to show cause why I should not be disciplined. Sure. I got on TV. I got, what the boy name? Lawyers Committee? Center for Constitutional Rights. And I got Grover Hankins from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. I had a lawyer coming out of here from Atlanta. And then we had the boy down in Jackson. What is the singer? What's the guy name? At any rate, he was an organizer. He came up here, and on the date of the hearing, we had 250 people in the courthouse. Couldn't nobody get in. And Dorothy Henderson and the other guy didn't show. So they had to drop the case.
Gotcha. Look, we are running up on time. We're gonna have to do a retake on you.
I know,
Because
but
there's so much more.
yeah, Ayers got to be by itself.
Gotcha. Let me ask that to be by itself. I agree. It's too important, and a lot of people.
20-some years.
Exactly. But let me just ask you.
Ask the question.
Tunica, the
City, that's another case.
Okay, the
Sugar
sugar
the Jolly. Okay, so Sugar the Jolly.
And before that, we want you to close with a comment about what would you share with young people about what they ought to be doing. But let me just ask you to talk
Yeah,
a little bit about
sure.
Sugar Ditch
Yes,
just for
yeah.
a minute or so before we close out.
Well, basically, okay, I love you for that question because it shows again.
Filmmaker get credit for that.
Filmmaker, thank you. Filmmaker, look, this was the situation. It's 1984, and that's the same. There was a part of that whole Delta, Mike Espy kind of case, and I'm saying we got to do voter registration. Nobody want to do it. So I take leave, and I did 2 articles in the Jackson Advocate saying Freedom Road, and I was gonna go the Delta District, the same as we got, Mike Espy. We're gonna go from Memphis all the way down to Port Gibson, the Delta District, and we're gonna do voter registration all the way. And basically, what happened was that I had my little van, and I had about 10 or 12 people, that went with me to caravan, and we had a march. So we marched. Tisdale was there. We had SCL. Joe Lyra was there. We could always count on SCLC. And the first day was cool. Then the second day, we get to Tunica. And they tell us about, this place where the sewer is backed up. And we went up in there, man, and there was houses and that stuff stinking. And Tunica, the city of Tunica, every house was made. You had 7 or 8 millionaires living right there. And I said, oh no. And so we filed this suit against Tunica, and basically we filed 5 suits in Tunica. One was at-large election. We got this, so we got back on the board, city council, and we filed a lawsuit in employment discrimination. But the big one was the Sugar Ditch Alley. And as a result, they moved everybody out of Sugar Ditch Alley. Jesse Jackson came down, and we was on TV, and they was on 60 Minutes and all. And Jesse, them say Tunica was America, Ethiopia. Back then, Ethiopia had to, starve and everything. That was our case. And I spent 2 years working on, but we worked it out, Sugar Ditch Alley. And so, but out of that, we took over the board of supervisors. We took over the court. In other words, you have and you can go up to 6 minutes now and get about part of that's, and I got some tapes and other things. But my point is, you have to be involved. It was many nights I didn't know whether the Ku Klux Klan will kill me or not, because I'm going to them community meetings by myself, man, and them little funny one-way highways, and, you fall. All you got to do is push you over. But the bottom line was those people in Tunica were good people. It was on Nightline, and, of course, as a result of Sugar Ditch Alley, it forced the governor to say he gonna have some revenue, and allegedly the casinos came in there to give revenue to the people in Tunica, and we let it alone. But they had very few local people, the casinos, and we found out you have to watch what you wish for. Because we found out a lot of the poor people, even though they was poor, they losing their money. So you know what I'm saying. But the casinos really did not help that place at all. But we were responsible for getting them there because it was the poorest. See, Sugar Ditch Alley was the poorest place in America. And so, Jet Magazine, Ebony, and, Time Magazine, and, internationally, 60 Minutes, Nightline, so.
Right.
But that was a legal certification.
Thank you. Let me just close out with this. There's no question about your passion and your dedication and your commitment over all these years and your household name throughout the country. What would you share? Because we got young people here today. We got young people that's going to be doing research into the future. What would you share with young people in terms of what they might be made? How would they go about making a difference? You talked about your life.
Yeah. Well, let me just say,
Going to Howard.
Well,
being involved all these years.
For the young people, I am sending out a clarion call, but I've been doing this. I did the march, and we'll talk about that later, march on Washington. But for the young people, I am available, and I'm trying to pass the baton. I'm not like Joe Madison the other night. I was listening. I ain't passing shit. I mean, excuse me, but you have to believe in the young people. They got answers, okay? I don't understand this YouTube, but they got it, and they can use it. And we got to give them the courage, but we got to show them that we care, and that we have to show them that we appreciate them. We have to love them. And I cry, man, when they still got people with these walking breeches and pants below their creases. But what you gonna do? You just pray. But see, I leave three things with them. I start off with Invictus, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I pray to God, wherever he may be, for my unconquerable soul and the felt clenches of circumstances. I've not cried aloud. I have bludgeoned circumstances. My head is unbowed. It matters not how straight the gate, how hard the punishment they're going to give me on the scroll. But I am the captain of my faith. I am the master of my soul. That's one. Number two, and that's endless. Number two, you look at it, and if. Now again, you got to separate. For you smart people, you got to separate the person from the poem. Okay, it's like Amazing Grace. All right, the man who wrote Amazing Grace was a slave shipper. He did everything, but he repented and all that. But the bottom line is that Amazing Grace is the motto for black folk. You can't take it away from, even though it was started by a slave person. And the same thing about if you can keep your head when others losing theirs and blaming it on you, and it goes on, and it basically say, you walk with kings, not lose the commentary. Yours is the world. And more importantly, you be a man, my son. Now, the man was not a good man at all, but he did. And the third, of course, is Claude McKay. If I must die, I'm not going to die. I'll keep this short. With my head bowed, but I'm going to die a man fighting. Okay? And of course, last but not least is the Bible. Anything that you want in life, you can find it in the Bible. And you got to understand, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. And you have to have faith and belief. And if you got those things, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about a thing. I'm 77 years old, and God knows, I have not. In other words, I can say it. I am officially poor. Now again, I got a little real estate I ain't sold, and but my son said, well, Daddy, you choose to be. No, I don't choose to be poor, but you're going to give me $3.5 million to sell the Ayers Craig and Clothes Valley. Are you crazy? And the other case was down the gambling case. And it just certain things, certain principles. You just have to, I call it blood money. I'm not going to take no blood money. And you see what happened. And, Ayers ain't over yet, but we got $3.5 million attorney fee, and I was against it. I said it was malpractice. And them white boys up there in the Maryland case, they got $23 million, and they only worked 7 years. We worked 20. But they say, well, Al Chambliss is crazy. And he don't want no money. He just wants freedom. And we mess around our child, we won't get nothing. And they were absolutely right, because I didn't give a hoot about the money. I wanted my people to be free.
Well, wow. Well, Brother Chambliss, you have taken us on not only a literary journey, but a legal journey as well. And I think it's so apropos for the audience to see how you do not only have that legal background, but you also have that literary background that you just shared with us a few minutes ago. So again, we just so appreciative of your being with us today to share with us all the things that you have encountered and how you're giving back to the community, particularly the community of color. And again, we're just thankful and so much appreciate you.
Well, I hope that we do 3 of these. Ayers is one, and that's a whole program. And then the other one is the future, not only legal service, but us. And basically, there are people like Terry Buffington, right? She's still available. And of course, she was at West Point. The West Point movement was more combative. One of Featherstone, you remember Featherstone and all them people? Yeah, we ain't said nothing about them, and they got children. I got children, and I'm saying that I instill in my children, go up north, get your little money, but come on back down. And they're coming. They're going to come back, and they're going to be pretty stable in terms of income, but more importantly, the movement goes forward. Where is the movement? We got to deal with citizenship, man. Citizenship is the only way we can be equal. And there ain't no Voting Right Act and no Section 5. That's crazy. It's citizenship. 13th, 14th, to 15th Amendment combined. Okay? And that's where we get our freedom. All this redistricting, ain't none of it going to work unless you have the right tools, and the right tool is citizenship. And we got to talk about where we need to go and how 3 things. Legal services, okay, it started, but we can go back to the old landmark. 2, charitable giving. We got to stop discriminating against black lawyers. All the money go to lawyers commit all. Blacks they never had in the history of the world. Public interest. And number 3, the next jump from Ayers is unique programs. I've talked to Fauci, right? He's scared of me because he knows if you're going to have clean up COVID-19, you got to have black doctors. And if 50 years, 5%, 50 years, 5%, you don't have a black medical school in this country public. Howard is private, Mahara is private, and the little thing, Morehouse is private. Why? 85% of the, well, not really, not, but if you knock Howard off, 75% of all the black students at the black schools go to public, and then you don't have not one medical, so that's intentional. But we got to change it, and that Ayers give us a floor, so we got some future.
Good, good.